You are listening to the Whiskey Tango Chaos podcast.
Nobody's trying to see this. Any of the changes since I've been in have not been to make the life of the person who's already in better.
I'm boiling over here.
And like literally the skinny jeans and getting off the internet were exact quotes.
That's a quote.
Yeah, so to tie a bow on that one.
The wildest thing that you ever witnessed in the dorms.
Don't be an out-of-touch leader. I'm going to give you a shit answer.
All right.
I think. Beards be damned. They modeled behavior that is acceptable today.
And the chaos starts now.
Welcome back to the Whiskey Tango Chaos podcast. I'm your host, Clayton Spakes. And believe it or not, I'm still a Master Sergeant in the United States Air Force. I'm here with my wife, Amanda.
Hello. I am. Can I just say something really quickly? I love our setup. This is probably the most, every time I get more and more comfy. I'm sitting here, I got a blanket, I'm lounging on the couch.
It's much better. Yeah, if you want to
great.
see what it looks like, I think we have some posts on our social media at Whiskey Tango Chaos is where you can find us on Instagram or Facebook. And yeah, we converted our fourth bedroom in our house to a whiskey room / podcast studio. Feels a little aggressive to call it a studio, but it's just a place where we can podcast and we can leave equipment out if we want, which is nice. But the big part about it is it's definitely the most comfortable spot that we've had so far since we've been doing this. So in the past, we've always been like at a kitchen table or something like that, which it served us well. Yeah, that happened once. Yeah. So this is definitely more comfortable. And it's nice to have just a dedicated space to go. For me to hang out and drink whiskey. There's a TV back here too, which is great. But also just to sit and podcast and be sitting on couches as opposed to sitting on like a hard wooden chair.
Mm-hmm. And with no back. Yeah.
And enough room for 4 people in here to podcast all at the same time as well. This is our third one in a row that's done in here.
Third or fourth. Yeah. We're on a roll.
Oh, no, fourth. Yeah. Cause we did a solo one in here together as well, but it was before we had it completely set up. We are living now, you know.
there's no stopping us now.
Yeah, now it'd be great if this podcast would just make some money so we can pay for this shit. So easiest way you guys can help us with that, go to whiskeytangochaos.com. You can support us through the store or through our Get a Coffee link. I promise we won't use it for coffee. But the easiest way that you can support us and the cheapest is if you just find us wherever you listen to your podcast, leave us a 5-star review and tell us how much you enjoy listening. If you don't like it, you can keep that to yourself. That doesn't help us.
And tell a friend too. Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely. Spread the love, be a friend, tell a friend. That is absolutely the best way that you can help us. But of course, buying merch and all of that sort of stuff is much appreciated. Thank you guys, everyone who's listening. This actually will be our 20th episode.
Ooh,
so
hey,
moving on up here, getting things done, trying to be more consistent too. So this will be another solo podcast, just the old lady and me.
Yep.
Kind of nice, I guess. It's fun to have these little touch points, I guess, where it feels like a little less pressure than like interviewing somebody.
That's true. There's a lot of
use interviewing very loosely.
there's less preparation with this. It's kind of like, are the kids down? Yeah. You want to go podcast? Sure. And then we grab some whiskey and sit down and start chatting. So
I think for me too, like I know I can just go on a rant and it's like less stress about it, right? Like I'm not like, oh, okay, like I need to let them get their story out because it's mostly just us bullshitting about whatever's going on in the world.
Yeah.
All right. So that's our welcome. By the time you guys hear this, it will be St. Patty's Day.
Woohoo!
So this is our special St. Patty's Day episode. And keeping that in mind, like every episode, we'll tell you guys what we're drinking. And again, ladies first, what you got?
All right. In honor of our good buddy and
frequent podcast visitor
and supporter, probably one of our biggest supporters. Tonight, I'm drinking Jameson Black Barrel. It is a triple distilled Irish whiskey. This is, does it say ABV in it? 40%.
Yep, has to by law.
Yeah, doesn't it? This is an 80 proof whiskey. It's real easy drinker.
Yeah, that was Chad's go-to. So when we promoted, I asked Amanda to go to the liquor store and buy a bottle of Jameson for Chad as a promotion gift, and she came back with options. So she had the Jameson Black Barrel, but then she was like, "Well, what do you think about having him try something new?"
Because he does like Irish whiskey, so I was like, well, let's just stay in that vein. So
we got a different one, and I chose to pick the other one. and let him try something different since he always gets Jameson for himself or has it for himself anyway.
Well, and then we invite him over to drink this one.
Yeah. And as a bonus, I got a bottle of Black Barrel, and we shared some with him too.
Yeah.
Cool. So
what are you drinking?
Mine, very similar characteristics, still an Irish whiskey, still 40% or 80 proof. This one is Green Spot by Mitchell & Sons, single pot still Irish whiskey. It is absolutely delicious. Had it on the show before. It was actually one, if you go back and listen to the episode with Ian Holmquist and Brian Muehlman, back when we were still in Ohio. I think that was actually the last episode when we were in Ohio.
Yeah, we were recording that episode
Brian
amongst
brought tacos. So
amongst all of our boxes because TMO had already come to pack us up. Episode 8.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite whiskeys, honestly, and I cannot wait. The Yellow Spot is on my list. I was going to buy that for this episode, and I was vetoed by the old lady. Yeah. But if you see pictures of this room, if you find those on social media, you'll see why I was told I'm not allowed to buy more whiskey at the moment. We've got quite the collection going. None of it is like crazy expensive. I just have a lot.
Yeah, we're just slowing down the pace a little bit. Let's just Yeah,
for some reason when we were living in the camper over that like first 3 months that we were here with not very much space at all, I decided to like probably triple my whiskey collection. I think it was just combination of having like time off for house hunting and like learning the area. Everywhere we would drive around, if I found a liquor store, I would just go in and look for something.
But
and
also, the most important part, we were living in a camper.
Yeah, so we needed it. It was essentially, if you think like prohibition style, we might as well have had a prescription.
Yeah. How to survive in.
Speaking of, that's on my list of like things to purchase
with the prohibition style.
You can buy on the old interwebs. You can buy like authentic prescription slips from the prohibition where like doctors prescribe people
that's cool.
whiskey. So it's on my list. I found them. They're not overly expensive. They're like $50 or $75 for what are supposedly, I don't know how you authenticate them, but they look authentic. So we'll see.
Listen, that would look good.
Yeah, good talking point.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I am drinking the Green Spot. Again, it's 80 proof. It's definitely smooth. And then also the triple distill process makes it, or the pot still makes it like really easy to drink too.
I think that's what I have learned, having now tried a variety of different ones. I really enjoyed the whole triple distilled. Like you just get like a much smoother product, I think, for my personal palate.
I think with this one, with these, it's a combination, right? It's like the triple pot still definitely makes a difference, but also like over the last several months, probably my fault, I've been having Amanda drink a lot of like, I've been bringing a lot of like cask strength stuff in the house. So, and she doesn't really like, or I guess I shouldn't say you don't like, since I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
And you don't really like the stuff with like a heavy alcohol bite. So
yeah, I don't enjoy
a lot of the
stuff
stuff that I bring back, if I open it for both of us, is like not really your taste either.
No, I really don't need to be punched in the face. I get enough abuse from the toddlers.
I don't mind it.
Day, so.
What I like about this Green Spot is you get a lot of like to me, like citrus and floral notes. Like it's kind of sweet without being like that. Angel's Envy Finish Dry was delicious, but it's sweet because it's finished in rum barrels and it tastes sweet, like almost like syrupy, like sugary sweet. This is like sweet, but because of the original mash bill, I think. And that's exciting and delicious.
Yeah.
Anyway. Moving right along here. So before we get into kind of our topics for discussion this week, we posed a question on our Instagram and Facebook about your biggest dorm confessions. So let's talk about some of them. Amanda's got the list up. Tell us what you got. What's the first one?
Yeah. So the question was, a dorm party isn't a dorm party without. Like, let's have some fun here. So I got to know more about this one. This would be interesting. Someone jumping off a gazebo. Did you ever witness jump?
We didn't have gazebos at Right Pat when I was living in the dorms, but
is that the only place you lived in the dorms? Was Right Pat?
Yeah, because you typically only do it as like a first term airman, and like once you get out, you're probably not going back in the Air Force. Like the Army, I don't know as much about the Navy. The Army, like it's not as uncommon to have them be in the dorms like up through like E5 unless you're married. But for us, like on the Air Force side, you typically get out as a senior airman and sometimes a little earlier depending on where you're at, because for us it's based on dorm occupancy rate. So if it gets up, I believe here locally it's like 90%. If it gets to 90%, then they'll start kicking people out. Or not kicking people out, but asking people, you have the opportunity to get out. Most people want to do that. You get more money, you get BAH, which
also you're not living in a dorm.
Right. So. You can live where you want. You can live closer to all the things that you're doing. If you have friends, you can find a place. That's what several people in our office do. They all live together. And so they're, combining their BAH for one rent. And you can either do you can either live in like one really nice place and spend all your BAH, or you can go super cheap and save most of your BAH. So a lot of people, that's what most people choose.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a hell of a rant.
Yeah.
So I did not see anybody jump off of gazebos.
Okay.
At Wright Pat, I lived in the old dorms, which still exist, but no, never saw anybody jump off of. I'm trying to think if I saw anybody, because ours were like 3 stories, and it's basically how have you ever been told if you're going to stay somewhere, like it's a bad hotel or a bad motel if the rooms are like outward facing? Right. That's kind of the same for Air Force dorms. So the dorms are shit if the doors face the outside. Like all of the newer ones, like the quad style or like whatever they're calling them, it follows hotel rules. Like if you have to walk up through the inside and then the room to your door is like on the inside of the building, then it's probably nicer. If it's on the outside facing building, then it's probably older and crappier.
Just run.
I was in the older, crappier ones. I didn't mind it though. The rooms were big. So ours were, you had your own room that had a sink and a microwave and a mini fridge in it, but you shared a bathroom with the person on the other side of the building. That's
not too bad, I don't think.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible, but anyway.
But did you see anybody doing a keg stand with 2 random people in the corner debating?
Not keg stands, but yeah, there were definitely that was like a staple of dorm life, was like on the weekends, it would just be dorm party. Okay. And so for reference, like the dorms that I stayed in were a weird mix of people, right? So my building was pretty much all Intel. The building across from us was medical. And I don't know how they let this happen, but it was like a weird combination of I think it was the first floor was all medical. Like they were still in tech school. So they were in the second phase of their tech school. And then the top 2 floors were permanent party, which is wild because, so a little context, when you're permanent party, you are not supposed to mingle with students. Like that's a big no-no. And if you get caught like messing around with them, like anything, it's a huge deal. And yet for some reason, like they mixed them in the same building and then we all hung out together, like all kinds of, it was definitely happening. And like, I don't know how they would have ever caught it or what they would have done about it if they did, but in theory, you were not supposed to you weren't supposed to like mess around with the students.
So they like group you guys off in the dorms based off of your career field?
At Wright Pat, they did when I was there. I don't know how it is. I can't speak to every place, but at Wright Pat, that's how it was. Like not owned, but all NASIC people were like in that building. I think that was more like it just made it easier for like first sergeants and stuff in the building. So it's like, okay, you know that all of your people are going to go in, this area. 1215 was the building number, but are going to go right there. And then, so ours, there were 4 buildings. So it was us and then medical across from us. And then the ones beside us were pretty much all security forces.
So who had the wilder parties?
Security forces for sure.
Oh gosh. Well, the person that asked about the keg stand is security forces. So that makes sense.
I will say this is going to be like, I don't know how to say this without it being a dig at security forces, but I think the reason it was crazier is because like the Intel side, like we were smart enough to not really get too crazy and have crazy dorm parties. Like if we wanted to get crazy, we went off base and we had friends that had houses or apartments. Even if they were in base housing, like it was a little easier to get away with being crazy. And so you'd go somewhere like that. Like it just getting too crazy in the dorm courtyard is just asking for the cops to get called. And
but how would they treat their own then?
I don't think they really cared, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
It happened like several times. And what ends up happening is like everybody just drops what they got and then they go run into their rooms. And then you just hope that the cops can't sort out like who had what. Yeah. And at the dorms that I was at, there weren't like cameras or anything. So now in the newer ones, there might be, or maybe they like retroactively installed them. But yeah. Oh, sorry. But going back to the question, definitely saw like craziness where everybody was drinking and it's loud and chaotic, like in the courtyard. And then you would randomly see like two people on the side having some weird political debate. Like it was again, cause it was just
that
a
sounds like
weird
a non-military dorm party too.
Well, just a weird mishmash of people, right? So you have like everybody at that age, like, or at that phase, most people are somewhere between like 18 and most of them are probably between 18 and 22, 23. You have the occasional person that came in later and they're like 24, 25. But yeah, and it's, you're not supposed to underage drink, but like that is 100% what goes on there. You find the people that are over 21, they supply beer and liquor for everybody else.
All right. So I think the comment that wins for the dorm party isn't a dorm party is a future child support material.
Yeah, I would say that checks. It like you got to keep in mind a lot of people that are living in the dorms and you first come into the military. For a lot of them, and this was the same for me, right? It was your right out of high school, your first time you've left your parents' house.
Yeah,
a lot of us from like I wasn't from necessarily a small town, but from like smaller towns. Maybe not exposed to a lot of different things or different cultures, or like, it's your first taste of freedom. So first taste of being around that many people your age. And now, oh, by the way, you have access to alcohol. You don't have anyone really you have people telling you what time you have to wake up, but not what time you have to go to bed. And no, like you're an adult, like you don't have any supervision on your time that you're not at work for the most part. So yeah, definitely some craziness going on. Was that the last one?
No, we got two more comments. The first one, I'm pretty sure the whole playing beer pong on a ping pong table with shirts versus skins is a staple.
That 100% happened. Yeah.
Is it
like that? I remember that.
Did you play?
Yeah.
Were
like
you
we
shirts
played
or skins?
Probably shirts. Nobody's trying to see this. Yeah, no, I did beer pong, flip cup. Those were huge all the time. Whether it's at the dorms or at house parties. But yeah, like if you think about dorms, for anybody listening that was not in the military, if you went to a normal public college, like, so Amanda doesn't count, but like if you went, like there were not raging beer pong parties at Cedarville University.
No, and in fact, all of our dorms were segregated. So like, there were female dorms.
Wow, that was outlawed a long time ago.
No, female versus. And,
I'm just messing with you.
Goodness, now I can't even talk. There were female dorms and there were male dorms, and females are not allowed in the males, and the males are not allowed in the females. And yeah, ours
were separated by floor. I think, if I remember right. I'm pretty sure that's how it was. I think it was all males on my floor.
That's too close.
But
There's
it wouldn't
not enough room for Jesus there.
It wouldn't have mattered. Like you can get in and you could go. Like obviously your individual door locked, but there was nothing keeping you from just walking to the other one. Yeah. And you weren't like, I was allowed to go into a female's room and they were allowed in mine. Like it's essentially an apartment. It's not really like a dorm. But in terms of the lifestyle, it's like what a lot of my friends that went like straight into college, like what I remember them talking about, not necessarily in their dorms, but at like frat houses and like whatever, those type of college parties. Like it's not that different. Which makes sense. Same demographic, same age, except the other big upside is that we're getting paid. So we have access to things, right? Like we're not making a lot of money. Like at that age, you're not making a lot of money. But
do they take BAH
you are getting paid
when you're in the dorms?
You just don't get it.
You just don't get BAH. Yeah. Oh, okay.
So but you still have like you still have your normal paycheck. Right. So you have the ability to, buy alcohol or whatever. Now we might've been buying like Natty Light and Military Special, but it got the job done.
Last comment. Nice try, OSI.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, fair. So do you have okay? So what's the wildest thing that you ever witnessed in the dorms? As we've already covered, I have no wild stories.
I don't remember anything. Like the only really like wild things that I remember was just like if everybody was drinking and partying and like the cops came or whatever, like everybody like scattering like ants. And so I remember a couple of times like my dorm was on the 3rd floor. So I remember being up there and, obviously still drinking, but hanging out or whatever. And then like the cops coming and just being able to see like down into the courtyard and seeing everything scatter. I was very fortunate to not get tangled up in most of that. Like I said, most of the time, like if we were going to be drinking and acting stupid, we probably went off base. It was just like, why risk it? I wish I had like crazier dorm stories, but
there's nothing that made you go, whoa.
Not really. Like
that's because you were in
at least not that I remember, but no, like because the dorms were a mix, but there might have been some crazier stuff, but I just don't remember it. So that's very anticlimactic, but dorms were a wild, wild time, and I'm super glad to get out of them. Moving on, Amanda doesn't know what we're going to talk about today. And truthfully, I didn't either until about an hour ago. And I sat down and was like, all right, what do we want to talk about today? And then I remembered that earlier this week, I think it was 3 days ago now, there was, so Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Chief Joanne Bass, she does this monthly, quarterly sometime. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. She calls them coffee talks. Okay. They started a while back. I think she started them during COVID, if I remember right. I
think so.
I may be wrong, but essentially they started out, it was like her in her house with a PA crew there that would record her. And then she would like take questions, or she would talk about like what was going on in the Air Force. Truthfully, like most of them have been very bleh. And then here recently, she kind of got like a little bit of flack because she would have like celebrity chefs come in and do like a cooking show or whatever, which is like, it is what it is. Like, I don't really get all bent out of shape. Like a lot of that stuff, she could be using for recruitment, or she could think that it's just like interesting, and you can't like really judge every single thing that she does by the metric of like, well, there's all of this like crazy stuff going on in the Air Force. Like you're spending time doing this and you're not solving these problems. It's like, well, they could both be true. She could be doing a coffee talk with a celebrity chef, and also be spending time like taking care of pay issues or whatever the case may be.
Well, because the coffee talk, because it sounds like, I mean, what a lot of us did during COVID, like how do we connect with people? Like how do we continue the conversation going and like connect with people and know that we're still here and we're still like present or whatever. And it probably could have started off with that, and it's just a way to connect. And maybe this is just having a celebrity chef. Like, who cares? Like,
when I think
maybe it makes it interesting for somebody, or maybe this is her coffee talks are just something to go.
And like everything else, the military is like behind the times. So but finally understanding that is likely a medium that people will digest information. So you send out like the CSAF, General Brown sends out memos all the time. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, well, those are great, but
who reads them? Right.
Like maybe you read them as a senior NCO. Like I always read them, but Airman me probably would have seen that and been like, I would have read the title and just be like, oh, okay, cool. He's talking about resiliency, delete. Like I wasn't reading the whole thing. Where if you have like a video or something like interactive where I can ask questions, whether it's like a podcast or whether it's a YouTube channel or whatever, even like Facebook video is where the coffee talks usually are, is usually like just meet people where they're at and have them digest information the way that they're trying to get it.
Did something happen with our coffee talks this week?
Yeah. So go back. So a little bit of context.
Okay.
The week prior to that, we all got an email with a memo with an immediate addendum or change to 362903, which is our dress and appearance AFI or instruction. And they changed the tattoo policy. Okay. So the tattoo policy now is like pretty lenient, especially compared to when I came in. So now we can have full sleeves, essentially like you just can't be. At the time before this, you couldn't have anything on your neck or hands, face, like all that sort of stuff. Well, the changes are you can now have tattoos on your hands and on your neck. Really quick version of what you can have. You can have one tattoo on each hand that is no larger than 1 inch by 1 inch square. Okay. You can have one solid band on one finger of each hand.
Okay.
And then you can have one by 1 inch square tattoo on your neck. But essentially it can't be on your throat. If you draw a straight line down from like the opening of your ear on one side and then the opening of your ear on the other side, you can only tattoo like the back part of your neck.
So you're talking about like the behind the ear tattoos, like
either behind the ear, or you could have it like on the side of your neck or the back of your neck. You just can't have it like on your throat, essentially. And again, you're talking like 1 by 1 inch square. That's a really small tattoo. That's not very big.
It's a knick-knack.
Yeah. And actually I should have pulled it up. She actually had a really clever Facebook post with it where she was talking about like the reasoning why they did it. But the picture was like of a hand with like a little Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force rank insignia tattooed on it. It was actually pretty good.
Yeah, I saw it because the comment when she posted that she said, "All right, now Airmen, don't go running out and starting getting tattooed real fast. Like, let's back up and like think about this for a second." And to explain
what I appreciated was like her explanation for why, because so immediately what happens with people who like aren't capable of critical thinking on the internet, they say, well, we're allowed to have tattoos. Where the fuck are our beards? And it's like, okay, yes, we want beards, but think about it. And she said it. My thought, and then talking to, or actually, he'll be on the next episode, David Vasic, who was a recruiter, was like, yeah, this is a recruitment tool. And not in the sense of like, hey, we want you because you have tattoos, come join the Air Force. But in the fact that like the amount of people that we don't allow to join the service because they have these tattoos, which I guarantee you the neck one, that is why it is. So 1 inch by 1 inch squared. Think about like all the people that you know that have like a moon and stars or some other random shit tattooed like behind their ear, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Well, that before would have disqualified them, or they needed a waiver, and it's like a whole process, right? Same with hand tattoos. If they're just small, cool. Like, let's make it like it's easy. So it's just the tattoo thing was just 100% a recruitment tool to make accessions easier so that we can meet the numbers and get to the desired end state of our force. Right. And to kind of change with the times. And I think that's all of the tattoo policies. Like they have never been, any of the changes since I've been in have not been to make the life of the person who's already in better. It's to change with the times and make it so that we're not disqualifying otherwise exceptional people to join the military and to meet our numbers. Right.
Yeah.
So,
because, you know, the amount of tattooing is becoming, and tattoos have become more and more acceptable. Like more people are getting them, you know, it's becoming more a part of the culture. So, you know,
but we don't need
keeping up with all that.
So we don't need to get distracted with tattoos.
Okay.
But that was the context of this. So the coffee talk starts. And one of the very first questions, and this coffee talk, it's Chief Master Sergeant of the Air Force, Bass.
Okay.
Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Force, Chief Toberman.
Okay. And
the SEAC, or the Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chairman, Chief Master Sergeant Colin Lopez, or CZ.
Okay.
And so if you're not aware, I know I was surprised at the amount of people, especially like on the internet, people that are in like E5 and below, or even E6 and below, that had no idea what the SEAC was or that he exists. So the SEAC, Senior Enlisted Advisor to the Chief, is the like no shit highest enlisted member in all of the military, right? So they are the enlisted advisor to the Joint Chief of Staff.
Got it.
Or to the Joint Chief of Staff. So really big deal.
Right.
So that's the three chiefs that are on the coffee talk 3 days ago.
Okay.
Well, the very first question that comes up is like something to the effect of, well, let's address the elephant in the room. We got neck tattoos, but if you really want to do all the things that you're talking about, when are we going to get beards?
Okay.
And so this has been a hot button topic for, almost as long as I've been in, I think.
I feel like you guys have always talked, like this has been a year, years.
It picked up steam when the female hair standards changed. I think that was last year. It might have been 2 years ago now.
About 2 years ago.
But they allow like ponytails. You don't have to have buns, like all that sort of thing. All really good stuff. And they did it with science-based research, essentially, that was like, hey, like long-term effects of having your hair up like that tight in terms of like migraines, or even like just causing your hair, like affecting your hairline, like and having hair loss, like all this stuff that they were able to prove and pitch, and then got it changed in the uniform board. Well, so they tried beards like right after that, but my understanding is that the pitch sucked, and it was essentially like, it'd be great for morale. And so it failed. They pitched again this year, and it seemed like it had pretty good traction. I saw it was floating around the internet, the actual proposal that they sent, and it was pretty good. Okay. I think they did a lot of science-based research into like the number of people that have waivers because they have, I cannot remember the medical name of it, but it's like diomaticia, whatever. It's like ingrown hairs.
Okay.
But like worse than just like, hey, I have an ingrown hair and that sucks. It's like, it's a bigger medical condition than that. But going further into that, as we talk about like diversity, equity, inclusion over the last, several years, that's become a huge, huge thing. The other part that they wrapped into that was the fact that of the people with waivers for that kind of condition, the vast majority of them are minorities. And then they've also did the research to tie in like how that has affected promotion rates. And so basically tying it all back in to say that like, okay, we have a lot of generally the people with shaving waivers or that are affected by shaving waivers are minorities. And then also those people with shaving waivers are promoting at a slower rate. So if you made it so that everybody could have shaving waivers or could have beards, then it would be more inclusive for everyone.
Okay.
So
Valid
anyway,
point.
basically what happens, I'll spare you. Like, I won't try to say it word for word. You can look it up. It's on Reddit, on the internet. Essentially, they shit on the idea of beards, saying that, like, now who knows? The biggest one that like shit on him was Chief Colin Lopez, the SEAC. I'll caveat this with, I don't think, I may be wrong, but I don't think he is like any sort of like ultimate decision on whether beards happen or not. So beards may not actually be dead, but it sounds like they're dead based on their conversation.
Goodness.
We'll see what happens when the updates to 362903 come out. I know there was a lot of optimism because it came out about a month ago. The proposed like conditions for how you could have a beard were leaked. And so we're like, oh, if they got that far where they're actually coming up with standards, then maybe it's actually going to happen this time. But anyway, so I'll give my quick, like, I'll try to give my 5-second synopsis on the beard part.
Okay. You want me to time you?
Sure. It'll be longer than 5 seconds. But I would love to be able to have a beard, but I truthfully don't care. Like, it's not that big a deal. Shaving sucks. I don't like it. But if you have like a no shit medical condition, you are able to get a waiver right now. Now, should we continue to have discussions about like how that influences promotion and that sort of thing? Like, absolutely. Now it feels like they're giving out a lot more readily. So maybe that will be like the equalizer, is if, you know, if everybody who doesn't want to shave just goes and tries to get a waiver, maybe that's the equalizer.
So they're not making it as difficult as they had in the past to get a waiver to shave.
Yeah. But anyway, short version, it doesn't really matter to me. The fact that we're like that outraged and people are choosing this as their hill to die on is weird to me. Like, there's bigger issues, I think. But, you know, it is what it is. If it really matters to you that much, then great, go at it. Go for it. What I did have a problem with, and I thought was like really shitty, were most of Chief Colin Lopez's comments. So his comments about a beard, instead of saying like, oh yeah, like I don't think it's the most professional, or like, I just don't think we're there yet, or he has insight into working with the other enlisted leaders of the other services to say like, yeah, well, we need to all be on the same page and make it so that we can have this be like a DoD wide thing. And we're looking at it from that level. Cause I have heard that was like what was holding it up before, is that the Air Force and Space Force were kind of willing to do it, but the Army and the Navy had kind of said like, hey, could you please not? Because we're trying to deal with these other things and we just can't focus on that right now. So any of that stuff I think would be great. Or like, hey, we hear your perspective, blah, blah, blah. But he didn't say that. Instead, what he said was essentially like very, very condescending. Hey, you shouldn't even be thinking about this. You should be looking at fighting wars. And if you guys would get off the internet and stop wearing your skinny jeans, you wouldn't be so worried about these beards and how you looked. And like literally the skinny jeans and getting off the internet were exact quotes.
That's a quote.
Looking at it and you're like, holy shit, you are the enlisted leader of all of the DoD, right?
And that's the best answer you can come up with?
And you are being the most giant condescending guy I've ever heard. It's like so out of touch and shows a lot of where our leaders really are. And the fact that he did that, said all that, and neither of the other chiefs on that panel said a fucking word other than Chief Bass. Chief Bass made a face. She just like raised her eyebrows, but kind of like shook her head and laughed, almost like, well, he's just saying the things that we all want to say, was kind of like the impression that you get. But nobody said a word. Nobody stopped him. Nobody said like, whoa, Chief, like maybe you shouldn't say that. Like all of the things that they expect frontline supervisors to do. If we heard somebody speaking like that in the office and potentially like isolating people or making people uncomfortable, their expectation for us as really from the time you come in, but definitely by the time you've gone through ALS, so as a senior airman or a staff sergeant, is that you would call that shit out and stop it immediately.
Absolutely.
Instead, you have the highest enlisted member in all of the DoD like saying all of these things, and then you have the highest enlisted person in the Air Force and in the Space Force sitting there with their mouth shut. So a little bit of background, Chief Colin Lopez has an exceptional record. He was a PJ. He's got a Bronze Star with Valor,
Wow.
and all of the, like, his resume is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, very
and
impressive.
are things which of course you would expect for somebody at that level. But to me, it almost feels like when you hear him talk, to have like that kind of attitude and be that out of touch that's the bigger issue to me. It's like, beards be damned. Our leaders should be more in touch and be setting the example for the type of attitudes and the kind of leadership that they want from the rest of us. Right. And so,
well, just think about the shoes on the other foot, right? If the shoes on the other foot, if you were to say if you were in a meeting, or giving a brief or whatever, and talking to your airmen, and you were being condescending and rude and pompous and arrogant and whatever, you would get talked to.
Yeah.
They expect you to, you might be thinking it, but you can't say it. You need to come up with a better way to, hey, we're looking at it. I hear you, we're whatever. So they expect you to hold your stuff together, but they themselves don't hold themselves to the same standard. And that's gotta be the frustrating thing.
So I'm not necessarily worried about like the things that he said in terms of them being hurtful. It's more about like how condescending it was.
Yeah.
In terms of like just being talked down to, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, so I may not say things the right way or the most appropriate way, but I 100% of the time, like, do my best to try to be at least, relatable and have empathy and try to relate, try to relate to the person that I'm talking to, and certainly not try to like isolate them and make them think that their idea or the thing that they care about is stupid. Even if I think it's stupid. Mm-hmm. Right.
Right.
He even talked about saying that he doesn't agree with like or wishes that even the religious exemption would go away, so that there just weren't beards at all, or beard and religious exemptions and waivers. Like, it's just ridiculous. So that was the coffee talk. That was my big topic for the day. But to me, the beard conversation was less important, but it said a lot to me about how out of touch our leaders are, especially the ones that are supposed to be advocating for us in the National Capital Region, are that out of touch and that condescending to the very people that they are supposed to be the advocate for, the person that they're supposed to be representing. Now, there may be valid reasons why you can't do it if you're talking about beards or whatever. But if that's the case, then be transparent about the real reason why that's the case, maybe. But then certainly frame it with some sort of compassion or empathy or like whatever. Just even if they just said like, yeah, we hear you. I understand that beards are something that are important to you guys. It's been on our list of things we've talked about over the last several years. But here's X, Y, and Z reason why I think we just may not be here yet. As a senior NCO, it's like kind of not necessarily like a wake up call, I guess, but like okay, cool. I heard this, and this of course was like egregious enough that you're like, whoa, right? Like this was like just super condescending and shitty all around. But then it makes me kind of take a step back and be like, all right, like when I'm handling things, when I'm talking about people, like coming in, like, so here's like a silly example, right? So I recently got moved around to a different job, and we're moving to a different office where we have like a little more freedom, ability to kind of take things in and out of the building, that sort of thing that I didn't necessarily have in past jobs. Well, one of the first questions I got asked by the guys that I work with was like, hey, well, what about having like a shop dog? Can we bring a dog in to work with us? Right.
I love a good shop dog.
Yeah. And so of course, like my first reaction is like, what the fuck? Like, no, like what? Who is going to take, I have so many questions. First of all, like who's going to take care of this dog?
Right.
Like, where is he going to go to the bathroom? Like, how does this all work? Right. But, using that as like an example, had like, instead of talking to them, you can still joke around and like say like, no, like that's ridiculous without like, and then explain like reasons why, or like ask questions. But like, had I just come off the top rope and be like, no, and the fact that you guys are even thinking about a dog is absolutely ridiculous. Are undisciplined. The fact that you're thinking about a dog instead of thinking about how you can help the Air Force is why China and Russia are going to win the war. And you guys are everything that's wrong with the Air Force, and your skinny jeans, thinking about your granola and how you can feed this dog blue buffalo. You must be a bunch of hippies. Like, what the hell? And that's exactly how Chief Lopez sounded.
Absolutely.
And so it was a good way to like take us, like, that's a silly example, but for me, at least, hopefully I'm not the only one that heard that and was like, definitely don't want to act like that as a leader, or even like not in a leadership position at all. Just think about like how you want to handle interpersonal relationships and how things happen when they come up to you. Mm-hmm. I think is good, especially when you talk about like you never know like what people are going through and like what that can mean to them, or like just that one conversation. Or
it might have taken a lot of courage for them to come up and ask you in the first place, right? And because you're still building that relationship bridge. Yep. So take a minute, take a breath, have a conversation with them. Who knows what will come of that? But
yeah, so to tie a bow on that one, don't be an out of touch leader. And always take the extra, 10, 20 seconds to put some thoughts behind the words that are coming out of your mouth and how they are going to affect or how they're going to be interpreted by the person that you're talking to. So, all right, moving on before we finish up tonight, we've got a few questions and we will start. The first one, let's see, I'll let you read it.
Okay. Oh, hey, I get to read something tonight.
I just need to refill my whiskey.
Hey, you're refilling your whiskey that you got from Ian. So let's go with that one. He asked, so we'll pose every couple of Mondays or so, we'll pose an open mic question. Feel free to comment on that one or truly any of our posts.
Yeah, we go back and look. So if you posted on the wrong one, we'll still check it.
Yep. We love these because we enjoy interacting with y'all. So Ian asked, on our open mic question, at what point are we, I would assume the Air Force, military, DOD, becoming too politically correct?
I'm going to give you a shit answer.
All right.
I think. It
Is
depends.
It because of the skinny jeans?
Yeah. My skinny jeans are cutting off circulation in my brain. And now I'm undisciplined and China and Russia win. No, I think it depends.
Okay.
So are we too politically correct in general in terms of like trying to be more inclusive and that sort of thing, like in terms of sweeping DE&I initiatives? I don't know. Like if a group of people felt marginalized and we're doing something that helps that, then I think good. Like in terms of, certainly in terms of like not cracking down, but like things being things that were acceptable when I first came in that are not acceptable now in terms of like language and things that you would see or that you could say and nobody like batted an eye at. I think that stuff is fine and is just part of culture changing and growing and hopefully becoming better as people. Now, like at the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Yeah. It's the same as like if you go back now, like you and I loved the show Mad Men.
Oh yeah, loved it.
And a lot of that was like really politically incorrect now in terms of like the way they acted. But at the time, there was no issue with it. That was 100% just the way things were. And that's kind of how I feel about now. Like we grow, we evolve. Where I think that we start to draw the line and like where we become too politically correct is in getting rid of culture-based things. So like aircrew has been affected a lot by this, that sort of thing, where it's like, okay, we say that like Air Force probably has the least amount of culture. We're also now the Space Force is the youngest, but before that we were the youngest service and we have by far the least amount of culture. And I think that's a lot of it. Like we're still young enough that we were kind of searching for that cultural identity. And so now when you do things or take things away, even something as ridiculous as like changing the words to the Air Force song from like Adam Boys, Give Her the Gun. Like they don't say Adam Boys anymore because that wasn't inclusive.
Yeah.
It's shit like that where I'm like, okay, like now we're too far. Like we're supposed to be a fighting force, supposed to be the world's greatest air power. But like somebody's feelings are hurt because the song says boys as opposed to like, is not inclusive enough. It's like, okay. Like stuff like that in my mind, you're approaching like trying to be too politically correct. But in terms of like just general day-to-day stuff and how we've evolved, I think is good. I think that in general, a lot of the things that we do now and we try to do as leaders make you better leaders. And even back when things were different, right? When I came in the early 2000s, the best leaders that I had, they modeled behavior that is acceptable today, right? Like they were empathetic. They were the ones that would do exactly the opposite of what Chief Colin Lopez did when you brought something to them, right? Yeah. The ones that sucked then are the ones that
opposite of him.
Yeah. They were the ones that sucked then are the ones that suck now. Like if they came and they were just like, you suck. And they were the yelly, like knife handy ones, right? Then those were the ones that those were still the same ones you didn't want to work for and the ones that you steered away from. I think the difference now is people were given a pass in the past that they are not necessarily now. And I think some of that is a good thing. And not only for the inclusivity part, right? Like, I certainly think you make it for a better work environment if everyone that you work for is happy to be there and not just the people that look, walk, talk, and act like you. But I think also just in terms of preparing you to be like an adult outside of service, right? That was a very long-winded, it depends. If you're doing away with like culture things, or if you're just getting like really queepy with the words that I can use, like I don't agree with dictating my speech.
I agree with it. Yeah.
Turns out Sergeant is neutral. So
All right.
that's the easy way.
So our next question comes from Chad. Do you think the Air Force puts too much emphasis on the awards program?
This one, more definitive answer this time. I will say yes. The reason I say that it puts too much emphasis on it is because when they changed to the new enlisted force distribution model, so for those that don't know what that means, essentially when you're up for promotion, you are put up for, or you can be put up for force distribution. And if you get either a promote now or a must promote, you get additional points towards promotion. And when they added that model, they, over the course of a couple of years, took away the points that we used to get for time and grade, time and service. Now they've started to add some of that back, but not nearly to the level that it was before. So when they implemented that model, it started a competitive mindset of like, okay, well, I have to step on you to get to the next level because I have to make sure that everybody knows that I'm better than my peers. And part of that is not necessarily that, in my mind, is not necessarily that the system is wrong or that the system is broken. It's that we didn't have the culture or the leadership in place driving that change at the time to make it worth it. The way that worked itself out and the way that people separated themselves was by getting awards. So it almost became like, hey, if you want to get promoted, you have to get an award. And if you want to get at least one award a year at the squadron level, probably at a minimum, to even be considered for EFDP. And if you want to really be competitive for EFDP, you probably need to have at a minimum, a quarterly award at the group or wing level or higher, if that's available to you. And so I think that's where they became overvalued, is that we got off course and we stopped focusing so much on like who is a good leader, who is good at their job, and who brings better value to the Air Force. And we started focusing solely on the things that were easy discriminators so that we could determine who was best in the eyes of force distribution panel. And that's where we started focus. I think that's where we were too focused on awards. And that's what's made this culture, right? And a lot of that is just, it's hard. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with awards, right? Like, I've won them. I'm proud of my troops when they win them, when they're deserving, and I will always put them up for awards. I think the flip side of that too is, or the other side of that is, like, as a supervisor or as a leader, it's also your responsibility to understand the process and set your people up. Yeah. So knowing that is the process that we have now, then like I almost like become part of the problem, because it's like, all right, now I'm pushing my guys to be put in for awards because I know that it's essential for the promotion process. Now, can you get promoted without a force distribution statement? Absolutely. Or at least you certainly can. Yeah. But it makes it much more difficult, especially the higher you get up, and especially with promotion rates dropping recently. So, because you got to think of it this way, right? So when you're going to the force distribution panel, you're looking at several people over several different career fields. And so you kind of have to look at it and I've sat a bunch of boards, when you're looking at it, a lot of the times the work bullets are kind of a wash, because it's hard for me to say that like Airman X over here, who's a maintainer, who has done all of these things, that this job bullet is better than Airman X who's in finance. Like, that's a drastic example, right? But like, It's like, okay, because if you're a maintainer, you're going to be able to have you're going to have all of these numbers, right? It's going to be number of sorties, dollar amounts for all of the aircraft that they've worked with, where like it's going to be quantified completely different if you're in a different career field, like finance or whatever. So
how do you match
if you're
up
if you're on a board and you're looking objectively, like I try to not get lost in the sauce of like all the numbers So work bullets are kind of a wash.
Okay.
So then you have to work through like, okay, what are the other things they did that set them apart? And it's like, okay, what squadron things did they do? Like what additional duties did they have? Were they a part of, the 5-6 or the top 3, or even if they weren't a part of that, like, okay, cool. The work bullets look good, but did they win any awards? Because that will give you like a better indicator of how they performed within their, squadron group wing over the period, over that rating period. Right.
Yeah.
So if the bullets read good on your EFDP package, but you didn't have any quarterly awards, then didn't have any award wins, then my thought is like, okay, on the EPR, are these overvalued? Because if they are as impressive as they read on this package, then it should have been impressive enough to win an award, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So then there is a lot of focus and emphasis on awards then.
Yeah. And I think where we've lost our way and why we place too much emphasis on them is because there's no way for us to tell that because you won an award, you are a better leader or more deserving of promotion, because the culture that we've bred is where a lot of times what you see is people step on the people around them to make themselves look better and get that award, or they'll inflate the things that they did, take credit for things that people did around them, or like whatever the case may be. And I say all that knowing that like, I don't have a solution. Like I don't know. And I don't think that awards are a good barometer for how good of a leader you are. That is my thought on my very long-winded awards episode. But speaking of old Chad Halling, stay tuned over the next several months. You will likely see another in-person episode with Chad and Rebecca Halling. Can't wait for that to come later this summer. With that being said, we didn't have any other questions. Is that it, babe?
No, that's it. That was it.
Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode. We appreciate all of the support. Like we said, you can find us at Whiskey Tango Chaos on all social media. whiskeytangochaos.com is the website. There you can find links to all the podcast, as well as a link to our store. Again, if you're listening to us, whatever service you're listening to us on, please take the time, leave us a 5-star review. So don't hesitate to reach out to us on our social media. We try to stay pretty active, and we'll answer all of your questions on the podcast as best we can in my very long-winded manner. But with all that being said, hope you guys have a happy and safe St. Patrick's Day, and we will catch you again in 2 weeks. Hope you enjoy all of your green beers, and hopefully they have a body of water to turn green in the city that you're in. Here in San Antonio, they turn the Riverwalk green.
I know. We're excited about that. It could be fun. I think the most exciting we're going to get is we're just going to turn the bathtub green.
I mean, we'll see. This room's green, so maybe I'll just come in here and have a whiskey.
There you go. It'll work.
All right. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Cheers.
Cheers.